can we think of schools as a democratic society? Okay? What do we mean by school as a democratic society? School as a democratic society is a school where not only the students, but all of the members of that community, in primary and secondary school, the parents of the students, perhaps even the community itself, may have something to say about what takes place in the school. Okay? Now, why should we pay attention to this phenomenon? Those individuals who advocate democracy in schools have a very important insight, and controversial insight, in my personal opinion. They say one of the reasons why students are alienated is because the schools are not democratic. If the students will have a say in how the schools function, then they wouldn't be alienated, because they will be part of the decision-making process that rules the school and actually would determine even the curriculum of the school. Okay? So one of the reasons why, let me emphasize this again, one of the reasons, according to this perspective, why democracy is so important is because we would basically engage the students, reduce the levels of alienation, and therefore perhaps have better results in terms of education and much less deviant behavior in schools, because the schools have a stake in what the students want. Okay? Individuals who emphasize the question of democracy say schools are one of the few institutions in society where the consumers, basically you, the students, have no voice. You come into this, when you came into this class, I gave you a syllabus without counting, without even questioning whether you were interested in what I had to teach. So, according to this democratic perspective, people, they will say, you're going to have some students in your classroom, Professor Pumar, that are here only because they need 3 credits, that are here because this is a convenient class for them to take because of the time and how often it's taught during the week, because perhaps one of their friends are in the classroom, and perhaps because they have some interest in education, but they could very easily be alienated once they saw that you imposed on them what you thought was important to learn. So the idea then is, by engaging the students, by engaging the members of the community in the decision-making process at all levels of the schools, you will basically be more interested, you will learn more, because you have a very strong stake in what's happening not only in the classroom, but in the community in which you live itself. Okay? So if you live in the dorms and you have a say in what happens there, you will take care of the dorms. If you participate in extracurricular activities and you have a say in what's happening in extracurricular activities, you would then have more at stake. You will put more into it because your opinion counted and counted, sufficiently to make to be part of the governance of the school. So as we discuss this perspective, one of the questions that we need to ask is this possible? Is it possible to run an organization where the consumers, the students, have a strong say in how the organization actually works? Number one. Number two, if it is possible, to what extent can we carry on democracy? I don't think I need to tell you that there is some degree of democracy in schools today. I don't know if you would agree with me on that. I think there is. So there is some degree of democracy, participation, there is some degree of participation. However, some people would argue this is not enough. Okay? We have opened some areas of the institution, but in others we are very, very carefully guarding those areas. Okay? What the two authors that we're going to discuss today say is this is not enough. Going halfway is not enough. We actually need to engage the students at all levels of the governance of the school, whether they are in primary, secondary schools, whether even in the classrooms, and or whether they are at the university level. Okay. So before we get into details about how this democracy happens, let me give you an example of how it could take place in the classroom situation. Advocates of democratic participation usually come in and say, and I'm going to give an example of a university because you have certain level of knowledge already, and therefore some responsibilities. You are here voluntarily. Okay, so and this is very important, and I will come back to this point in a few minutes. But they say if you're teaching a class, proponents of democracy, what you should do is show up the first day without a syllabus or without books. And the first day, instead of what I did, I came in here, I gave you the syllabus and say, this is what we're going to do. These are my expectations. They say, okay, stop. Professor Pumar, right there, half of the class, you lost half of the class, according to this perspective. What you need to do is, you need to come in empty-handed and say, okay, this is a class about education. What do you all want this class to be? Okay? Tell me, what would you like to learn in this class? And then you will come in and you say, I want to learn, X, Y, and Z. Okay? Democratically, everybody agrees on these points. Once we get a consensus, we say, okay, now we know what we're going to cover in the class. Let's now pick up on books. Okay? You're going to go out and you're going to pick some books that you feel that are adequate for these topics that you want to learn. Okay? And you're going to bring them to class. And we're going to make a selection of, let's say, 2 books out of, 6 or 7 that you bring. And what are the expectations that you want out of the class? Would you like, for example, people, some of your peers, to come in and have a drink in class? Will you allow that? Yes, okay, fine, yes. Will you allow someone with a computer? Yes, okay, well, fine, we allow that. And the role of the professor then becomes a facilitator in the democratic process. Okay? Now, this is very, very important. Well, let me say, I want to emphasize something very important before we move on. This is not easy. I don't want you to think, oh my God, this is such a piece of cake. I wish all of my classes would be like that. It's not easy. Okay? And the reason why it's not easy is because think about what the democratic process does. It defers some of the responsibilities of the course to you. If the course works, it's not my making. You determine the course. So if it works, success to you. If it doesn't work, well, we learn from our mistakes. It doesn't work. We have to move on. That's a risk that we're taking. Okay? Because in a democratic society, what we do when we engage everyone in the class, think about it, we are deferring participation to everyone. Okay? So what that implies to all of you, and this is why it's not easy, is that you have to do an awful amount of work outside the classroom to be able to be prepared to the class, because you are not an audience in this process. You are an active contributor to every stage of the class. So imagine, for example, that I come in and say, you guys have to select the readings for next week. Well, you have to spend, a good 2 or 3 hours in the library looking for readings. So this is why we need to ask the question, is this possible? Is it possible? Because, many of you are taking 4 or 5 classes. You sometimes have work, extracurricular activities, training for different activities, training to, for exams in graduate school. Now, imagine giving you, on top of all of that, more things to do, and making you responsible for doing this. It's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. Now, what we know is that students who are engaged tend to learn more than those who are not engaged. That basic fact we know. Okay, and this is why we have all these programs that we have now about first year experience and everything else. The students who are engaged know a lot more, learn a lot more. Not only they learn more, they retain more than those who are not engaged. Okay, and we're going to see why later on today when we talk about Paulo Freire. Okay, now. Let me say one other point about this idea of democracy before we actually come in and talk about the readings of today. Actually, let me make 2 points. The first point is that democracy implies responsibility. There is a great deal of debate in sociology, in the sociology of education, frankly, about are students responsible enough to assume the responsibilities that are given to them in a democratic society? Okay? Are students responsible enough to assume the responsibilities that are given to them in a democratic society? Again, there is a huge debate about this. So there is a great deal of debate. Everybody agrees on the principles of democracy. Everybody wants inclusion. Everybody wants participation. I think that a lot of professors would like to see the students more engaged in the learning process. We all, adore the students that come to our office hours and take ownership of their learning. Okay, that's for us is the ultimate satisfaction. But not everybody does that for one reason or another. Okay, so then we have to question whether this idea of responsibility that comes along with democracy is a very good idea.